Hi guys, it's Jessica D 1987 and I'm coming at you guys tonight with a new recipe, and this recipe was requested by a new friend of mine on YouTube. Her name is Mommy G05 on YouTube, and I just wanted to do this recipe for her, and it's for spaghetti and meatballs, doing a homemade spaghetti sauce and a homemade meatballs. So let's get started. Right here on the stove I have a big pot because I'm going to be doubling this recipe, because I'm going to be using half the sauce for spaghetti and meatballs, and later on in the week I'm going to be making a 3-cheese penne pasta bake with a spaghetti sauce as well. It's going to be needed for that recipe. So right now I have this pot heated on medium heat, and I'm going to add some olive oil to the pot, just about a tablespoon or two. And if you don't have olive oil, you can use canola oil or vegetable oil. To that I'm going to add 4 cloves of garlic. Now remember, I'm doubling this recipe, so if you're just making it for enough for one recipe, you're going to use 2 cloves of garlic. And I'm going to add in a large onion, chopped. The recipe, I'll put it in the description box so you guys can have it. There we go. And you're going to want to let the garlic and onion saute. You don't want the garlic to burn, because if it burns it's going to get bitter, and that's nasty, and it's going to ruin your whole dish. So you're going to let the onions and garlic saute for about 3 to 5 minutes until the onions start to get translucent. But like I said, you don't want the garlic to get brown, because then it'll get bitter. So make sure you keep an eye on it. I'll be back when it's done. Okay, now that the onions and garlic have sauteed for about 4 to 5 minutes, this is what they look like. If you guys can see that. And now I'm going to add my spices to it so it can give off its aromatics. Now if you have fresh herbs, I say go ahead and use that. If not, use your dry ones. So I'm adding in some freshly cracked black pepper. I say about a teaspoon, because I am doubling the recipe, or you could just do it to taste. Okay? Then you're going to add a little bit of salt. Just about 1/4 to 1/2 of a teaspoon. And now I'm going to add in my dried spices. I have basil. And you're only going to need about 1/4 to 1/2 a teaspoon if you're using dried herbs, because they're more potent than fresh herbs. I have parsley, thyme, rosemary. I have some oregano. And I'm even going to add in a little bit of Italian seasoning, because it has a few extra herbs in there that I don't have on hand. And then my secret ingredient is a little bit of ground chili powder. Just about 1/4 of a teaspoon of that. And then you're going to stir these around, and you'll know that it's ready to move on to the next step once you start to smell your herbs. Okay. And at this point your heat still needs to be on medium or medium low. And once those herbs start to give off their aromatics, I'm going to go ahead and add in a little bit of sugar to take away the tang of tomatoes. It has a little bit of a vinegar aftertaste, and I kind of don't like that. So I'm going to let that cook for a few minutes, and then I'm going to add in about 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup of sugar. Okay? Okay, I've added in the sugar and the aromatics, the dried herbs, and I've let them cook for about 2 minutes. And once that has broken down, the sugar has started to kind of dissolve and absorb itself into the onions and the rest of the herbs, I like to add in about 1/2 cup of chicken stock. If you are just having this recipe, like I said, because I am doubling it, you only use about 1/4 of a cup of chicken stock. And any chicken stock will do. Low sodium, whatever. So I'm going to add that in. And you're going to stir that really well to get it mixed in with the sugar and the herbs. And at this point, you want to turn your heat down to about low or medium low because you're going to be adding in the tomatoes and the sauce. From here, I have about 4 Roma tomatoes that I've diced up with the seeds and everything because I'm going to blitz this down to a smooth puree. If you don't have fresh tomatoes, you can definitely use the can, but I had some in the refrigerator that I'm trying to use up. So like I said, it's about 4 small Roma tomatoes. I'm going to add those in. And then because I'm doubling this recipe, I would do 2 cans of tomato sauce, plain tomato sauce, and 2 cans of diced or crushed tomatoes. Those are the 15-ounce cans. So I'm going to add those right on in. So I'm kind of combining fresh ingredients with canned to give it a better taste. But if all you have is canned or all you have is fresh, that's just fine. Once you add in the tomatoes and the tomato sauce, you're going to give it a really good stir to combine all of the ingredients that you just added to it. And I'll show you guys what that looks like in just a minute. And it's going to be very chunky at this point, but like I said, I'm going to put it in the blender when I'm done. And if you don't have a blender, you can use a food processor, or even better, if you have the stick blender, you can use that, which I may just use mine because I do have a hand immersion blender, which makes for one less thing to clean up. Okay, so this is what it looks like, if you guys can see that. And I'm going to put a lid on it, and I'm going to let this simmer for anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes or longer. If you're going to simmer it for longer than 30 minutes, I would say keep it on a very low heat. You can simmer it for up to 2 to 3 hours if that's what you want to keep it more concentrated. But at least 20 to 30 minutes is what you're going to need, even if you're in a rush. So you can make this in advance and you can refrigerate it for up to 1 month in your refrigerator if it's in an airtight container, or you can freeze it and thaw it out the day before you need to use it. So like I said, I have it on about medium heat. And I'm going to let it go for about 30 to 45 minutes. And when it's done, I'll come back and show you guys the step right before, so you can see what it looks like before I do the immersion blender and blend it all up. Okay, stay tuned, guys. Okay, guys, while the sauce is cooking, I'm going to move on to the meatball portion. In this bowl, I have a pound of 93% lean ground beef. You can use ground turkey, ground chicken, ground pork, a combination of any of those, or you can use all beef like I'm doing here. So like I said, in this bowl I have 1 pound of 93% lean ground beef, and in here I've added in 1/4 of a cup, about 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup of freshly made ground dry breadcrumbs. And then to that I'm going to add 1 egg that's been beaten. I'm just going to lightly season it because the sauce has so much seasoning. I'm not going to put too much into the meat. So I'm going to add a little bit of salt. About anywhere from 1/2 to 1 teaspoon. Add some freshly cracked black pepper. And this is to taste. 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon. A little bit of garlic powder because there is garlic in the sauce, but just a little bit, probably 1/8 of a teaspoon, if that much. I like to add paprika to mine. You can add about the same amount as that. And a little bit of ground cumin, not too much because this is a very strong spice. And with that, you can do it by hand or you can take a spoon. I'll just do it by hand, and I'm going to sit it on my little board, and I'm going to show you what size you want to make the meatballs. Also to this, before I forget, some grated Parmesan. That's about 1/4 of a cup. You could add any cheese that you would like to that as well. Mozzarella, Parmigiano Reggiano, or you could leave the cheese out completely. But it does add a little bit of extra flavor, and my kids really like it. So I'm going to be doing mini meatballs. And I'm going to fry them on a stovetop. I don't like the consistency that meatballs get when you put them in the oven. I'm all about texture. And I feel like they're not as crisp, or they don't have a crisp skin when you do them in the oven. So once you have that mixed up, and you don't want to over mix your meat, otherwise you'll have tough, dry, hard meatballs. And since these are mini meatballs, I'm going to show you about how big I'm going to do them. About that big, if you can see. So when I'm done, I'll come back and I'll show you guys how to cook them up. Okay, now I'm going to show you guys how to cook these meatballs. So in this back pot here, I have it heated to about medium heat. I'm going to add in just enough olive oil to coat the bottom of the pan. And like I said, if you don't have olive oil, you can definitely use canola oil or vegetable oil. So I've made the meatballs, and it's made about about 30 meatballs. And depending on the size, if you do mini, it can make the same amount if you're using a pound, or if you're doing the bigger ones, it probably make about half that amount. So now I have the oil in the skillet. I'm going to add in the meatballs. You don't want to overcrowd the pan, and you want to make sure you brine it up on all sides, and take anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes, okay? So I'm going to add them in. Like I said, this is what they look like. I'm going to add probably about 8 to the pot. And the reason why I have a pot instead of a pan is because when it goes to fry, it can tend to pop up and grease can get all over your stove, and that's really annoying to have to clean up. Okay, and once they're all done, I'll be back and show you guys what the finished product looks like and how to put the meatballs into the sauce, and you'll serve it up over your spaghetti. Okay, stay tuned, guys. Bye. Hey guys, it's been about 45 minutes, and this is what the sauce looks like. I've stirred it up, I've tasted it, and at this point you want to taste it because the seasonings have had a time to incorporate with each other, so you want to taste it to see if you want to add more salt, more sugar, a little bit more spice. Just season it and taste it if needed be. So now I'm going to take my stick blender and I'm going to whip it up so it can be nice and smooth and like a puree. Okay, after you have blended it to the consistency that you want, you should see it should be nice and smooth like this. Can you guys see that? So, I mean, another great thing to add to this would definitely be some cream if you want to make it like a tomato cream sauce. I've done that in the past and it tastes really good. So, I've cooked all of the meatballs. This is what they look like. And I'm just going to add them in. And if you want to have texture, you want to add this in right before you need to eat. So, I mean, you can just heat these through. Takes about a couple minutes, and then you just put it over your pasta, your penne or your spaghetti, and you guys will be all done. I'll have pictures at the end to show the finished product. I hope that this video was helpful. If you guys have any questions, please send me a comment in the sections below, and like I said, I'll have the recipe in the description box. Take care, guys. God bless. See you later. Bye.